Hi everyone, I'm Sam Wilson Jr., and this is the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast, the music podcast on where I interview singers and musicians from genres of black music, gospel, jazz, blues, old school classic soul, old school hip hop, today's hip hop and R&B, Caribbean, Latin, Afrobeat, Afro-Latina, blue-eyed soul, disco, go-go, line dances, and the Lost 45s. So come with me as I take you on to a trip to the destination genre of black music right now on the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. Legal Shield is a proud sponsor of the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. Have you been involved in any types of accidents? Have you been a victim of identity theft? Have you been a victim of a computer fraud scam? Have you been in disputes with your tenants or landlords? If your loved one dies and they didn't write up a will for you or for your family, or you and your spouse are filing for divorce, or if you need help by opening up your small business, give Legal Shield a try. Visit their website at LegalShield.com and tell them you heard it here on the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. Do it today. You'll be glad you did. Welcome to the Black Soul Music Experience. I'm Sam Wilson Jr., and I have a special guest on my show, and we're going to do a little something different here on the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast because we're going to be doing, that's right, we're going to do something new on this episode, and this will be the first time doing something new, something fresh. So I am very delighted to have my guest on my show, and this lady that I'm about to introduce is a singer, songwriter, a music composer, and a violinist who plays all music genres, gospel, classical, opera, and today's R&B. So please help me welcome to the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast, ladies and gentlemen, Miss Stefany Prince. Hi, Stefany. How are you?
Hi, Sam. I'm fine. How about you?
I'm doing fine, and you. Welcome to my podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Excellent. It is a blessing to be here, and I appreciate you for having me on your show.
Alrighty. So we always wanted to try something new for this season. So I'm very delighted that you're here. So as always, America doesn't know who you are. The world doesn't know who you are. So I'm very delighted to have you here on my podcast.
Thank you.
So, yes, you're welcome. So let us begin, shall we? Now, where were you born?
I am from here in Louisville, Kentucky.
Oh, okay. That's something new from Kentucky. And were your parents in the music industry, or did they have any 9-to-5 day jobs?
Yeah, so my parents, my mom, she retired from a hospital, so she worked in various jobs, but her main job was in healthcare, working with post-op patients in one of the local hospitals. And she also sang in our church choir, like with the senior choir. And so she always had a lovely voice. And then my father, he was a minister. He passed away about 6 years ago now. However, he was a minister and a Vietnam vet, a Marine Corps. And he also would sing during his sermons. And so I've always had music talent in my family. And I believe it's been primarily on my mom's side with my great-grandmother. She played and led music over at the historic Zion Baptist Church, my great-grandmother, over at the Zion Missionary Baptist Church here in Louisville, Kentucky.
Well, before we go, my condolences goes out to you in the loss of your father, and we thank him for his servants.
Thank you.
Now, which high school did you go to?
Yeah, so I attended DuPont Manual High School, and also at the same time, I attended the Youth Performing Arts School, and that is so Manual is like a magnet school that has a whole bunch of different specialties students can learn and get additional education in, and then Manual is your standard, awesome, by the way, performing arts school, and that features focuses in music, vocal, band, theater, things of that nature.
And which college did you go to?
So I attended first the University of Louisville, where I studied music for about a year, and then I switched over to obtain my paralegal degrees from Sullivan University.
And what was your major in college?
Paralegal studies is what I got my associates and bachelor's in.
Now, who did you want it to be when you grow up?
Well, as a kid, I was pretty creative. I used to make roller coasters out of toilet paper rolls, and it was fun experimenting with like the different turns that I could make with those. But early on, also, my sisters and I took dance lessons at the Diane Moore Dance Academy. So, I didn't have like quote unquote a specific interest. However, growing up, it was making those roller coasters that really caught my eye. And then I eventually switched from dance over to playing the violin.
And how old were you when you started playing the musical instruments?
So, maybe backing up just a little bit. While my sisters were taking private piano lessons, I was playing the piano by ear already, and that was before I could reach the pedals. And um, so when we were pretty young still, my family would attend the Handel's Messiah over at Zion Baptist Church every December, and that caught my eye from the standpoint of the musicians playing the accompaniment. And so I fell in love with the violin. And then also there were these two sisters two black sisters. It was a diverse orchestra, black and white musicians. However, they really inspired me to really pick up the violin. And so I told myself, hey, I want to be up there one day. And so, I went back to my mom and asked her, hey, can I start playing the violin? And she told me to choose whether to continue with the ballet and the dance or to start playing violin. And so, as you know, everybody knows violin is a hard instrument to tackle and master. And so I told her I want to do violin, and she started me in fourth grade, Hartstern Elementary Public Education, where I started playing violin in the orchestra, which was led by the late Bennett Higgins, who was awesome in jazz. And then once he saw that I had perfect pitch, he coordinated divinely with Virginia Schneider, and she was one of the first people and one of the most prominent people with the Louisville Orchestra locally, and was instrumental in bringing the Suzuki method, I believe, over here. Miss Schneider just took me under her wing. She was a godsend and very influential with teaching me everything that I needed to know about the violin. And she basically just got me started and worked with my family to ensure that I learned what I needed to learn. And so I'm forever grateful. And so as I progressed on the violin, I went back and taught myself how to read bass clef, which is what the left hand reads in piano music, so that I could go back and play piano fully.
Was being a singer and songwriter and musician your calling?
Looking back, yes. Yes, without a doubt. It's a gift.
Now, growing up, who were some of your favorite musicians and singers?
I don't think I ever had favorites. I've always been interested in music across the genres, and I believe that's why I create across all of the different categories. Now, saying that, I've always been in love with the oldies, Motown, even country music like Patsy Cline. I think singers that I've grown up with, Prince, Whitney Houston, because Whitney didn't just have talent, she was gifted. And I appreciate, you know, people who are gifted, and because you can learn a lot. And then Stevie Wonder's music has always been timeless and awesome, along with Gladys Knight.
And who were musical influences that had inspired you?
I think at various points, especially with the vocals, Whitney Houston. I think with any of the truly gifted singers of the past and today, I think it's important to develop and know your own voice and to work to discover how it can work for you in whatever song or occasion that you are singing. And instead of just being like everyone else. And so when she honed her talent, and that's something that I appreciate and try to do every time that I'm called to sing or coach.
Now, as I mentioned in the intro, as a violinist, you play different music genres. That includes gospel, classical, opera, and today's R&B. How does your violin playing matches those music genres?
So, well, pretty much growing up and a few times as an adult, I played violin. Currently, it's no longer my primary instrument. I currently focus on piano or keyboards and the vocals. Um, I think how the violin and the piano influence or matches my genres. Given that I was classically trained, most of my music is going to be from a classical standpoint. And so I have to be intentional to, switch things up. If it's time to be, a little bit more churchy, well, then I have to, rise to the occasion and do that. And so, and I think that's important. That's an important skill to have as a musician or any kind of creative, is to be flexible with it and make sure that you're delivering as needed.
Okay. Now, you're also a music composer, and that's we are talking about on this episode because many of us African Americans may not know what a music composer is. So, please share with our audience on what is a music composer.
Yeah. So, as a composer and a music creator, so as a songwriter too, I use music to influence the mind. I experiment, whether it's with bringing various instruments and sounds together to create a theme or mood or to set an atmosphere or a specific vibe, or if it's just to create background music, drums. Um, I also can use instruments to create animal sounds that transport my listeners to faraway landscapes or to set them at ease. And music composing is also strategically used um, just for silence, interjecting moments of silence, and also using the various instruments to using various techniques to deliver various sounds and articulations, just as we do when we speak. You know, sometimes we speak animated, sometimes we sound happy. You know, and so we do that same thing with instruments and sounds. And so I basically visualize what I hear in my mind and I bring it to life using notes, sounds, words, effects, and silence. And to me, it's really awesome to have that kind of gift. The reason I began composing was after a recording engineer in the studio told me that one of my songs, which is a pop song called In Love with You, was too short for radio. So when I went back and tried to add some verses to it, I couldn't. And so I began singing it in a more operatic way. And and I found, you know, that to be a great option. And so I contacted a few composers to see if they could arrange the song for opera and orchestra. However, I never heard back. So I just went on out and bought the software and began composing it myself. And so it ended up becoming an Italian opera piece called Innamorato di Te for full orchestra, soprano, and tenor.
That's very nice. Now, you perform with so many dignitaries, with various orchestras in different cities. Please share with our audience on what was your experience.
Yes, so while I was coming up, I played in the University of Louisville's symphony orchestra. And one of the performances that we played for was for Mikhail Gorbachev during one of his visits to Louisville. And so I believe we were at maybe the Fair and Exposition Center or one of the big stages where we were playing the Russian type music for him.
Wow. Now, while you're not on tour, you did gigs and playing with wedding receptions and marching bands.
So I've done various gigs around town in different locations. So I basically sing definitely in churches and special events, weddings, funerals. I am in a gospel music group, and we actually are having a concert this Saturday at Oakland Baptist Church, 6 p.m. here in Louisville, and also for various organizations. I have done Lift Every Voice and Sing for the YMCA Black Achievers Program, where I mentor Black students interested in pursuing careers in various creative industries, and also for one of the library community groups. Last year, I was honored to perform one of my anthems at a empowerment anthem at a women's retreat that was held down in the Dominican Republic. And this year, it's very honored to have one of my worship songs presented at the 2025 National Convention of Gospel Music Choirs and Choruses down in Atlanta just a few weeks ago.
Now, you did a music score for a documentary back in 2020. What's it like doing a music score for a documentary film or a documentary video?
It was awesome, actually. And that was my first time doing that. One of my colleagues works in youth development, that whole arena, excuse me, and one of her projects centered around a an initiative called Summer Works, a local initiative that partners young people with organizations to get some work skills. And around that time, I believe it was 2020 or so, right around the George Floyd lynching, calling it what it was, and the Breonna Taylor homicide, um, the young people ended up producing a documentary on mental health and also the global social unrest that occurred right around in that time. And so I came in on the tail end of that project and created the musical score, which was a little diverse in all of the sounds that needed to correspond to all of the various scenes. And so I worked closely with my colleague and also the music editor in developing all of the music that was needed, including the transition, the music for the transition scenes. And so the project was fun. I had a very short turnaround time, which helped me develop the skill of creating on demand, and that also was actually a little stressful at first because I was a little overwhelmed. And then I decided to switch things up and make it easier by managing my time a lot more wisely so that I wouldn't get burnt out and could take breaks as needed. And I ended up delivering that project at least maybe a day early. And so that was really awesome to see that actually come to fruition.
We brought up mental illness a few minutes ago. You were battling depression at age 13. Please share with our audience on what took place.
Yes, so when I was 13, I was sexually assaulted by a friend while practicing to sing the national anthem at a local high school's homecoming. And that incident is something that led me to start songwriting as a way of journaling and coping with my emotions with that whole situation. Because life just began being uncertain, and I was hurting and just devastated on the inside and really struggling with why I had to go through that situation and trying to navigate how to trust people because I was 13. I was a little girl. I was still a baby in life, and yet that very same year, I was able to win a songwriting competition with the National Beta Club convention, which was held locally that year. And so, looking back, having won that competition the very same time when I had to experience something that was so devastating, it reminds me that I was a winner, even at my lowest point. And so, trying to overcome that whole situation has taken a whole lifetime, and it's taken me through depression, struggles with my faith, not knowing who to trust, when to trust, having no esteem, no self esteem, and just trying to figure out my why and my purpose in life. And at my lowest, I was at this little motel in Virginia Beach, ready to overdose and commit suicide. And I started praying for about the 10,000th time. And the Bible tells us that we should always pray and to believe. And so I just continued praying, and I ended up calling my mom and I asked her, hey, can you just come get me? And so from that point, I just battled back. And I am grateful that that God just kept me in the fold and that he never took his hands off me. And so, one thing that I do seek to do is to inspire people who do experience trauma, and especially trauma early on, to understand that it's hard to understand trauma while you're still going through it and while you're still trying to heal from it and come out on the other side. Trauma is not like cancer, it's not like a cold where there are remedies that have been researched and all of that. Trauma is that thing that it really has no one size fits all method for healing. It's something that you have to continue working at. Even when you think you're healed, you still have to work at it because you never know when something will come up and try and take you back. And so, I recently shared my journey at a few churches, and a gentleman stopped and told me that it helped him. And so I know that it is hard. However, I humbly believe with my whole heart that a measure of peace is possible no matter how hard it is. And I just hope that I can help inspire somebody to keep holding on and try to live a life that is more fulfilling than the life that you were dealt. And last year, I was grateful to be able to put out a calendar featuring my photography and some affirmations that can help people stay encouraged all year long. And so I hope to continue doing that and inspiring people in that way.
Amen. Excuse me. Now, that's a powerful testimony. And thank you for sharing it with me and sharing it with our audience, because as a church deacon myself, we always share our testimonies, something what God have brought you through and how did it turn your life around from ending your life and saying to yourself, I'm going to end my life, take away my life. And I said, I got so many other years to share, to give.
Exactly.
Why do I like to take away my life and not share it with those who may have that problem? So I want to thank you for sharing that testimony, because anyone who's listening to this or watching this episode, someone out there is going through the same situation like you. So you're not alone. So I say thank you for sharing that powerful testimony with us.
Thank you.
Now, on a happier note, since you are a violin player and a music composer and other things, what advice would you give an upcoming young adult if they want to play a violin?
Yeah, I think to learn any instrument, and when I say instrument, I also include the vocals. I would advise people to, number one, be dedicated to learning your craft. Also, be very disciplined to practice wisely, because sometimes when we start practicing, we're not practicing the parts that actually need to be practiced. We like to focus on the parts that feel good and sound good. And also to be unique, be your own self. I always say that sameness is overrated. And so I love to hear people who are different, like those Macy Grays of the world. So it's beautiful to bring your own unique self to any kind of field. I also would advise people to be flexible. There's more than one way to use music and to make a difference with music. And then lastly, to always have fun. I think the more difficult the instrument to learn, the more difficult the topic, it's important to interject and have those fun, light moments to keep from getting burned out and stressed, because there's going to be times when we lose. There's going to be plenty of times when we mess up. And so it's always important to have fun. And then I think one of the questions that I get a lot is about um, copying singers and trying to be like other people. It's just like when I said, just be unique, be your own self. I would recommend that people focus on honing the techniques that some of these phenomenal singers and musicians bring to the table. I think singing and playing music isn't always just about getting the notes right. It's also about bringing the emotion and impacting the listener for that very moment or that occasion in which you are singing or playing, so that you're not really being lazy with your vocals or your musical playing. To me, it's always about an emotion and making that impact. And I believe that getting out there and practicing is getting out there practicing and learning are great ways for people to develop their talents. So, singing in a church choir, community choir, school choir are all wonderful. In the same way when it comes to playing instruments. And then, if you want to develop further, if you can't afford private lessons, then try to find or put together a small musical group. That way, in smaller ensembles, you can further become more responsible for learning your own part. Because in most of those small ensembles, like quartets, quintets, there's only one person to a part. And so that's where you can really become more responsible with learning your own part. And so small ensembles are very, very critical.
Mhm. I'm very glad that you shared this because me growing up, I did take up music education when I
Okay.
was in the third grade. So I was with this music teacher, and she's white, and she almost looked like actress Lindsay Wagner of the Bionic Woman.
Okay.
So we was listening to her type of music, top 40 radio. Everyone from Carly Simon to Olivia Newton-John and Carole King and the Three Dog Night, and just to name a few.
Uh huh.
And when I went to public school, I went to IS 144 or MS 144 in the Bronx, New York, where I had to take up music education in the sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. And since those violins came out, I wanted to play those violins so bad. But just like you said, it takes practice. So if you're serious about it, then do something about it. As my late mom would always say, you can't be outside with your friends every single night if you're committed to being somebody. Because it's like saying if you want to be a violin player, you got to bring home good grades because that takes a part of music education. When
Hmm.
you listen to those notes, four eighths or seven eighths, that's mathematics.
Yeah.
If you're writing or composing music, that's English. If you're writing everything down, that's part of art as well. So that's why music education is so important. As you always say, music education equals brain power. So when I was growing up, my late paternal aunt was a music player and she was a teacher. And I was just playing the piano just for fun. But if you want to be serious about it, you have to practice and you have to be perfect. And my paternal cousins, they were in a piano recital, so you just got to be perfect. And you can't mess up a note. And all the audience will be like, did they do something wrong?
Right.
That type. So it's just
Hmm.
like you said, it takes practice and you got to be good at it in order to get a standing ovation from the
Yeah.
audience.
Yeah.
And not only that, family members will look at you too and see that you are doing something. And like me, I became a music DJ, and I'm doing these things at different organizations. So if someone comes to me and gives me a list of what songs they want me to play, then I have to look for them. And yes, I burn them CDs, and it takes practice. You have to pay close attention to the beats. And I be at different clubs on Friday nights. When you hear the DJ start mixing with the beats, gotta have the same foundation format. So I pay attention, I watch. And when I go home, when I do with my little DJ thing, I write down the songs that matches with the beats. So, like I said, you gotta have practice. Practice makes perfect. When you do well at these events, then people will give you a standing ovation, and people will notice you. So I'm very glad that you really brought that up.
Yes.
Now, here on the Black Soul Music Experience, I always ask my guests who is the top 10 black artist of all time. But since this is a conductor composition episode, as I said, we try to do something new, something fresh. So I always ask my guests who are the top 10. So we do it like a top 10 countdown since you're new. I don't know if you remember the show America's Top 10 hosted by the late Casey Kasem. He
I've heard of
starts
it. Yes.
he starts at the bottom 5. We
Okay.
get to the songs or the artists that had some of those hits but didn't get any recognition. And when we get to the top 5, we find out who was the best million selling artist, who had the best selling hits of all time. So if that artist had received top 10 number one hits, that artist received songs that had gold or platinum, that sold over 1 million copies in print, that artist had an album, received a gold album or platinum album or double platinum, and today diamond platinum, that artist performed on American Bandstand or Soul Train or the Midnight Special or NBC's Saturday Night Live or Solid Gold or on Sesame Street, because I see those cameo appearances on Sesame Street as well. Or did they perform on PBS, whether it's great performances or they had their special during Pledge Month? Or did they had that special on CBS or NBC or ABC? Or did they had that live special performing on HBO or Showtime? So we're going to do the top 10 black musicians and composers. So I'm going to start off with my top 10, and you can think of yours while I'm doing that.
Okay.
So I'm starting off with number 10, and the conductor is James DePriest. Now, he is unknown to us. He was born and bred in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Now, when I look at the Cosby Show Thursday nights on NBC, Bill Cosby will have some different musicians who will do different seasons. So James DePriest had did season 5 of the Cosby Show doing classical concerto style, but kept the same theme. So when you see like different seasons, they'll have like one will be today's R&B, next season will be Latin music, another season will be Bobby McFerrin, and then another season will be hip hop, another one will be Motown. When we got to season 5, they were doing classical concerto, black conductors that we may not heard of before. So I'm putting in the late James DePriest, who did the TV score for season 5 of the Cosby Show. So we'll put him at number 10.
Okay.
Number 9, another unknown, Kalina Bovell. She plays the violin at different schools and different concerts and different orchestras. So I'm putting Kalina Bovell at number 9. Number 8, I'm putting a tie. So we have 2 musicians who did scores, whether it's for motion pictures or television. Sylvester Levay, we may not know who he is, but he's the one who's the producer for the group Silver Convention.
Okay.
They're the ones who did the number 1 hit, Fly, Robin, Fly.
Okay.
And that was a number 1 hit on Billboard's Hot 100 Pop Singles charts, and also number 1 on Billboard's Soul Singles charts back in November of 1975. And yes, He won a Grammy Award for Best Music Composer and for the producer for the group Silver Convention. So I had at a tie with Giorgio Moroder. He's a producer for the late Donna Summer. He produced three albums, including Love to Love You Baby, Love Trilogy, and I Remember Yesterday. When we got to album number three, he was doing something new, a little futuristic Afrofuturism music, computers into the future. So that was something new for Donna Summer for the third album. And yes, he did the motion picture music score for the movie Scarface in 1983 that starred Al Pacino. So when I look at the credits, I said, oh, okay, now he's doing the score for the movie. So I'm putting Sylvester LeVay um, for the producer for Silver Convention, and he also did the score for the TV miniseries Something Out There, which was aired on NBC back in May of 1988 and later became a regular series. And of course, Giorgio Moroder, producer for Donna Summer, and did the music score for the movie Scarface. So we'll put both of them at number 8. Number 7, I'm putting in Coleridge Taylor Perkinson. And he was a black conductor, and he had an orchestra, and he did the song called Crystal Redentor. Donald Byrd did the track for that, so he teamed up with Coleridge. So that song was later used for the HBO America Undercover series. The episode was called Hookers at Hunts Point. Now, that was used for that report. So it was talking about hookers at Hunts Point Avenue in the Bronx, New York. So the only Hunts Point Avenue that I knew growing up, when it splits at East 163rd Street and Southern Boulevard and Bruckner Boulevard and I-278 Bruckner Expressway, you get to Hunts Point Avenue when you get all the way at the end in the industrial section for all of the food and restaurant supplies. The other end of Hunts Point that we didn't know about, that's known for hookers out there. So the special was nominated for an Emmy Award for Best Documentary Series. Now, this was the HBO America Undercover series. That's the specials that CBS News and NBC News and ABC News with their magazines they don't want to touch. But this was something that needed to be told. So we'll put Coleridge Taylor Perkinson at number 7. Number 6, Freddie Perrin. He was part of the Motown sound family back in the late 60s and early 70s. And then he went on his own. He produced artists for Gloria Gaynor, Peaches and Herb, and Yvonne Elliman. And he did the motion picture score for the 1975 movie Cooley High. And yes, they had all of the Motown songs on that soundtrack, and Freddie Perrin did the score in between. So we're going to put Freddie Perrin at number 6. Number 5, I'm putting down the late Roy Ayers. Now, he's known for combining jazz and funk and disco. But he did the movie score for the 1973 movie Coffee back in 1973 that starred Pam Grier. So we'll put Roy Ayers at number 5. Number 4, the maestro, the late Barry White. He came on the scene back in the late 60s, and then later in the 70s he was introduced. So he was best known for singing, songwriting, and yes, conducting. He had his own orchestra, the Love Unlimited Orchestra. Best known for number 1 hits, Love's Theme, which was number 1 on Billboard's Hot 100 Pop Singles charts back in the fall of 1974. He also took care of the group Love Unlimited with his then wife Lodine and the other ladies. And he had a string of hits, whether it's with his orchestra conducting or had some other albums from the Love Unlimited Orchestra. So we'll put Barry White at number 4. Number 3, the late Isaac Hayes. Now, He came on the scene back in late 1968 with was something new. He would take a 3-minute song and he would strip it and stretch it as far as wide as the eye can see. And he's known for his eucharistic raps. In other words, you know, stop with the talking, get to the singing. And then he would stretch it, and he had a symphonic soul sound. And his first album, Presenting Isaac Hayes, didn't do too well. So when he came back with album number 2, Hot Buttered Soul, a masterpiece. The album went gold and it sold over 500 copies in print, followed by his album, The Isaac Hayes Movement, and To Be Continued. And yes, he's best known for his music score, Shaft.
Yeah.
Number 1 on Billboard's Hot 100 Pop Singles charts. It won him an Oscar and a Grammy for Best Motion Picture Music Score. Let me tell you, when I see the credits, music by Isaac Hayes, additional rhythm and everything, not only he did the motion picture Shaft, offers were coming in. He did the theme for the ABC TV show The Men 1972-1973 season, and he did other music scores, including his acting debut in the movie Truck Turner and Three Tough Guys. And he made some TV appearances. He was on an episode of The Rockford Files, and he did a little music scene in those episodes as well. Other movies he was in, I'm Gonna Get You Sucker, and his other TV episodes, including The A-Team and Hunter. And yes, his last appearance was South Park. And yes, he did the voice of Chef. And later, he was a radio DJ personality at 98.7 KISS FM in New York City. Been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for the class of 2002. He passed away a week before his birthday in August of 2008. So rest in peace to the one and only Isaac Hayes, and we put Isaac Hayes at number 3. Number 2, the late Tom Bell. He was known for teaming up with Kenneth Gamble and Leon Huff, bringing Philadelphia soul in the late 60s and 70s and to the early 80s. He was there to help the Delphonics, came up with their hits, including La 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 Means I Love You, Didn't I Blow Your Mind This Time, Think It Over, I Told You So, just to name a few. He was producers for that group from 1968 to 1973. He also took care of the Stylistics from 1970 all the way up until 1973, and the Spinners. And he took care of them from 1972 to 1977. And he took care of some other artists, including Sir Elton John and Denise Williams, just to name a few. But I would never knew that Tom Bell was originally from Kingston, Jamaica, West Indies. So you never hear that Jamaican accent. You just hear his American accent. So he was later raised in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So he did it all. He's a producer, arranger, and conductor. So he helped out all those groups and artists. And yes, just got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for the class of 2025. So rest in peace to producer, arranger, and conductor, Mr. Tom Bell. Last but not least, number 1, the late Quincy Jones. He had done it all. He produced music for all different genres. Not only that, me growing up, I didn't know that Quincy Jones was a trumpeter. And when I saw all his albums, is he a singer? Only thing I've been hearing is different artists who does all those different tracks. And that was something new. And he produced so many artists, including Michael Jackson with Off the Wall LP and Thriller and Bad. Sold over 1 million copies, won a couple of Grammy Awards in between. He also did some of his own LPs, and also he had his own record label, Quest Records. He had Patty Austin, The Winans, George Benson, and Jack Wagner. That Jack Wagner from General Hospital on ABC Daytime. Just to name a few. But he'll be best remembered for doing motion picture scores. He did In the Heat of the Night and In Cold Blood in 1967, The Out of Towners for 1970. He also did sequels, They Call Me Mr. Tibbs in 1970. He did the movie version of The Wiz in 1978 and The Color Purple in 1985. But he'll be best remembered for doing TV themes. He did the theme for Ironside on NBC, Sanford and Son, and Hey Landlord, also for NBC. He did the theme for the ABC miniseries Roots, that was aired on ABC in January 1977. And he also produced some other TV shows, including The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air for NBC and Mad TV that came on late Saturday night on Fox. And yes, he created Vibe magazine, which was aired in syndication. So rest in peace to the one and only, the late Quincy Jones. So there's my top 10 composers of all time.
That's an excellent list that you put together, Sam. Okay, so here are my 10. I didn't really put them in order. I do want to highlight some composers, songwriters from and in the Louisville, Indiana, Ohio, I believe Alabama region, for everybody to start looking into and following. And so these are not in any particular order. Reginald Walters has a background in piano, arranging spirituals, conducting various orchestras. He also represented the United States in the 1992 Seville World's Fair in Spain. And he's written poetry, performed at Carnegie Hall, and he's currently retired. And at last check, and he is an advocate for the arts and educational curriculum. Another person I'd like to highlight is Valerie Coleman. She is a classical music composer, performer, and flutist, and founder of Amani Winds. And we know that Amani means faith in Swahili. She composes for orchestras, bands, and solo pieces, and she is from here in Louisville. Another person I'd like to highlight is Keith Cook. He is a concert violinist and educator, and he has created various techniques and publications that help teach people how to sight read music. Another person, John Chenault. He was born back in 1952 over in Cincinnati, Ohio. He was a playwright, composer, professor here at the University of Louisville. He wrote a tribute to Dizzy Gillespie called Ode to a Giant. I believe that was for the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra. I believe that piece that he wrote for the Cincinnati Symphony was called Ghost in the Machine, and he also founded a percussion group. Someone else I'd like to highlight is Keith Hunter, very popular gospel music composer and songwriter from here in Louisville. He had a choir called Witness for Christ, and one of his songs that we still hear all over the radio today is called God is a Good God. Another great person is none other than Michael Young. He is a Grammy-nominated songwriter, musician, and artist from Indianapolis. One of his songs, He Is the Answer, was something that he wrote when he was 9 years old, and he's very active still in the music industry. Another, and you'll have to help me with, I believe I have a few more left. Another great and rising star in the music industry is none other than Dennis Prince. He writes and composes gospel music. His song "I Owe God a Praise" is currently sitting at, I believe, number 3 on the gospel charts, and it is currently available everywhere for download. He is a dynamic preacher, and he is the individual who is having his debut concert this Saturday here in Louisville. Someone else that I would like to highlight is a woman named Faith Pillow. She dealt in various styles of music from jazz to folk to soul and rock. She was a singer-songwriter born here in Louisville in 1954, and she sang across the United States and also Europe. And she once opened up for Muddy Waters, and she passed away back in 2003. However, she and her husband released several CDs, records, and an entire songbook. I believe a few more. Todd Duncan was the person who was personally selected by George Gershwin for the role of Porgy in Porgy and Bess. And he was the first black to sing with a major opera company, and that was the New York City Opera back in 1945. And he is a native of Danville, Kentucky. And he also recorded Unchained Melody, which was by the Righteous Brothers. And I believe that is my list.
Okay, well, that's a wonderful list, including those that I may not know, but thank you so much for sharing your thing to us. Well, Stefany, it's been a pleasure talking with you on the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time out to be with me on my show, not only to entertain, but also educate, and to our audience that may not know about composing as well as black conductors. So I always want to try something new so that we can start branching out to our audience. So we know about the artist, but we need to know what's behind the scenes. And as a consumer, I always look at the credits. I always like to find out who did the music, and whether it's for motion pictures or television or on the Broadway stage, because you never know when award time comes. You never know that that person may be that person of color. So I always grew up on finding out who was the guest on the show, who was in the movies, and who was on the Broadway stage. Because when you see us, when you see, okay, TV show is over with, take the remote control. I said, but I want to check out who was the guest. Same thing with movies. I wanted to find out who was the person who played that role in that movie, or who did the music, because you never know. That song could be a #1 hit on Billboard's Hot 100 Pop Singles charts, or on the soul and R&B and black and jazz and gospel singles charts.
Right.
So I always grew up with some things that I need to know, and maybe someone else will probably say, oh, I didn't know that. Well, you know now. Thank you so much for taking the time out.
Thanks, Sam. And if someone does want to follow me, then they can just head on over to my website, stephanyprincemusic.com, and click to join my email list, or to send me a message, and I will add your information to my list so that you can get all the updates that you need to follow me on this journey.
Okay. Download all of the artists that we have talked about on this edition of the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. Visit iTunes.com, Spotify.com, or purchase a CD at Amazon.com. And make sure you follow Stefany Prince. Go to our website at stephanyprincemusic.com. riverside.fm/studio/sammuel-dash-wilson-jr-studio. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want to check out this episode, please subscribe by going to the link. The link is riverside.fm/studio/Samuel-Wilson Jr.'s. Don't forget to add the S at the end, dash studio. And yes, I will be posting this episode on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And if you have a hard time getting on to riverside.fm, then please become a member and subscribe to patreon.com/the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. Log on to Patreon, put in your email and your password, where you can see all of the Patreon shows by different creators. And make sure you go to the top and type in the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. Check out all of my audio podcast episodes and the video podcast episode clips that you may have missed. And if you have a hard time getting on to Patreon, then I will be posting this episode on YouTube. Go to the YouTube homepage, go to YouTube, and type in the name of my podcast, the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. If you like this episode, if you love my podcast, please subscribe, please support, please give me a thumbs up, please leave a comment, and please pass it on. Thank you for joining me as I close out this edition of the Black Soul Music Experience. Well, that's about it for this edition of the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. I'm Sam Wilson Jr. Thank you for joining me, and please tune in next week for an all-new episode. The Black Soul Music Experience Podcast is sponsored by the support of listeners and viewers like you. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe by going to riverside.fm/studio/Samuel-Wilson-Jr.'s-studio. And don't forget to check out my audio and video podcast episodes by becoming a member and subscribe to patreon.com/the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. And also check out my video podcast episodes by subscribing to youtube.com/the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. And please leave your comments, feedbacks, and replies by going to my Facebook homepage. Visit facebook.com/the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. You can also tweet me on X, aka Twitter, at Sam Wilson Jr. 66. As always, partying, remember this. Reach for the top and your dreams will come true, and it can happen to you. From all of us, take care. God bless. Thanks for listening. Have a good week, and please be safe.